He whispered her name into my neck, not mine. His hands trembled like they used to with me, only this time they trembled for her. I told myself I could handle it. I even smiled when I said yes. But when I saw the way he looked at her like I used to be enough, that's when I felt it. The burn. Regret doesn't wait to be polite. It crashes in mid-moan. Disclaimer: this content is intended for mature audiences only. Viewer discretion is advised. It started as a joke. Something we said after 2 glasses of wine and a podcast playing in the background about couples who try something new to reignite their spark. Al laughed, leaned back in his chair, and gave me that crooked grin that always meant he was thinking about something just left of center. "Could you imagine?" he said. "Us? Swapping?" I laughed too. But I didn't say no. We'd been married for 6 years. Comfortable, maybe too comfortable. Our routine was as reliable as morning coffee, safe, warm, and predictable. And yet, there was this silence between us at night that felt louder with every month. We still made love, but it was more autopilot than passion. So when the topic came back up, this time with friends at a backyard bonfire and just enough bourbon to blur the lines, I didn't shut it down. Her name was Sadie. Brunette, with a voice that slid like honey over sharp words. Her husband, Eric, was taller than Al, broad and quiet. They were the kind of couple you watch from across a room and wonder how they stay so perfectly synced. I was drawn to them, but not in the way I expected. The first time we all met up privately, it was just drinks. Music low. Soft glances exchanged under the hum of curiosity. Sadie talked to Al more than me. And Al? He looked at her like she was a sunrise he hadn't seen before. I caught it. I felt it. But I told myself this was what we agreed to. We set boundaries. Spoke them out loud, wrote them down like rules would keep the heart from misbehaving. No emotional attachments. No overnights. Full honesty afterward. But when the night came, when I watched him walk into that room with her, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: fear. The kind that coils in your gut and begs you to stop before it's too late. I stayed on the couch that night, barely blinking, listening to sounds I could pretend were the wind. I told myself I was strong enough. That this would bring us closer. That I'd feel powerful. Liberated. But when he came back out, hair tousled, lips still red, I didn't see my husband anymore. I saw someone who had tasted something new and maybe liked it too much. I tried not to cry. I tried to smile when he touched my arm and said it was strange, but not bad. I kissed him. I pretended. But that night, when he turned over in bed and whispered, "Sadie," in his sleep, I broke. Quietly. Like a woman who had said yes to something she never really wanted. Now I can't stop asking myself, did I open a door that I can't close? He didn't remember saying her name in his sleep. Or maybe he did and chose not to admit it. That was worse somehow. I didn't bring it up. What was I supposed to say? "Hey, you called out for the woman you just slept with instead of your wife last night. Want pancakes?" Al moved around the kitchen like nothing had changed. The same mug, same creamer, same smile that didn't reach his eyes. I watched his hands. They didn't shake anymore. We had rules. I clung to them like they were sacred scripture. But rules don't stop thoughts. They don't erase images. And no matter how I tried to scrub it from my mind, I kept seeing them together, his fingers brushing her hair off her face the way he used to do with me. That little half smile he gives when he's nervous but excited. I knew every version of him, or at least I thought I did. We lived in a quiet suburb outside Denver. Tree-lined streets, smiling neighbors, perfect little illusions. Al worked in architecture. Calm, logical, always building something. I used to admire that about him. I'm a freelance writer, which means I feel too much and live too much in my head. We balanced each other. Or used to. I met Al when I was 23. He made me feel seen, desired, chosen. But people don't talk enough about what happens after the choosing. When the glow fades and routine becomes a third person in your relationship. That's when I started wondering if we were bored, or just quietly dying. Sadie and Eric weren't the cause. They were the catalyst. They showed us what we were missing, or thought we were missing. Sadie's laugh was louder than mine, more reckless. She made I'll feel young again. I saw it. I felt it in the way he touched me afterward. Like he was trying to recreate something or erase something. I wasn't sure which hurt more. I didn't cry that morning. I made pancakes. I smiled when Al kissed my cheek. I acted like a woman who still had control of her life. But deep down, I could feel it. Something had cracked. And once it cracks, it spreads. I didn't want to be dramatic. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw her fingers on his chest, where my hands used to belong. It started with a message. Sadie texted me 2 days later. Hey, how are you holding up? I know this stuff can stir things. Just wanted to check in. I stared at it for a long time, rereading the words like they had a hidden meaning. Was it kindness or guilt? Pity or something else? I didn't reply right away. But the second I closed my phone, I started thinking about her more than I ever had before. The irony? It wasn't jealousy. Not at first. It was fascination. Sadie had done something I hadn't in a long time. She lit something in Al. And even though I hated that, a part of me also wanted to understand her, or maybe understand what I had lost. That night, I stood in the doorway of our bedroom and watched Al change. His back to me, the same freckle on his shoulder I used to kiss without thinking. Now I hesitated. Was it good? I asked. My voice cracked a little. He paused, shirt in his hand. What? Being with her. Al turned slowly. You really want me to answer that? I didn't. But I nodded anyway. He took a breath. It was different. Not better. Just different. He meant it kindly, but it cut deeper than any cruel word could have. Different meant she gave him something I didn't. And I couldn't unhear it. The distance between us grew in strange, invisible ways. We still touched, still kissed, even had sex once since the swap, but it felt like playing house. Like we were actors in a role we no longer fit. And then Eric called. He said Sadie was distracted, distant. He asked if we noticed anything off. I lied and said no, but something about the way his voice cracked on her name made my stomach twist. He loved her. Maybe more than Al loved me now. That's when it started, this tangled web of emotions I couldn't control. I started wondering what it would feel like to be held by someone who hadn't seen me fall apart. Someone like Eric, whose pain mirrored mine. I ran into him at the grocery store a few days later. Coincidence, maybe. Or maybe not. He smiled. I smiled back. For a second, it felt normal. But when his hand grazed mine reaching for the same carton of eggs, a jolt shot through me. Not just electricity, recognition. We were two people floating in the same storm, reaching for anything that felt real. I went home and cried in the shower. Not because I wanted Eric. Not really. But because I realized I might be falling out of love with Al. And worse, he might already be gone. The scariest part? I wasn't even sure I wanted to stop it. The silence between me and Al had started to feel permanent, like furniture we just worked around. We went through the motions, brushed our teeth side by side, passed each other in the hallway, ate dinner while scrolling through our phones. But the space between our bodies in bed felt like a canyon neither of us knew how to cross. Then came the invitation. Sadie and Eric wanted to host dinner. Casual, no pressure, just a catch-up. I read the message out loud to Al. He didn't look up from his laptop. Sure, he said. If you're okay with it. If I'm okay with it. That's what this whole thing had become, me saying I was fine with things I didn't understand, just to keep from breaking whatever thread we still had left. The night arrived with a quiet kind of dread. Sadie opened the door in a dark green dress, barefoot and smiling like nothing had ever happened. Eric hugged me a second longer than necessary. I felt his breath on my neck and nearly forgot how to breathe. Dinner was normal. Too normal. We talked about work, books, vacation plans. But the eye contact, those glances, told a completely different story. Underneath the clinking glasses and forced laughter was a current none of us could ignore. When Al offered to help Sadie clean up, I followed Eric onto the balcony. The air was sharp, cool against my skin. We stood side by side, watching the night. "I miss her," Eric said softly. "Even when she's right in front of me." I swallowed hard. "I know exactly what you mean." He looked at me. Really looked. And for a moment, I didn't feel like a broken wife or a woman spiraling. I felt seen. Wanted. We didn't kiss. We didn't touch. But something shifted in that space between us, something irreversible. Inside, I caught a glimpse of Al brushing hair behind Sadie's ear. A soft, familiar gesture. One I hadn't felt in months. That was the moment. The moment I realized we were all standing at the edge of a cliff and someone, maybe all of us, was about to jump. The air inside felt too warm when we stepped back in, like the walls themselves had overheard everything. I didn't say a word to Al on the drive home. He didn't ask. We both stared out the windshield like we were waiting for a sign, something to make all of this make sense. But the universe doesn't send signs. It sends silence. And silence makes you hear everything you've been avoiding. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, tracing cracks in the plaster like they could form answers. At 2:47 a.m., I picked up Al's phone. Not out of suspicion, out of something worse. Desperation. There was a message. "Sadie, I can't stop thinking about that night. And I don't want to pretend anymore." She had sent it 3 days ago. And he had replied, "Al, neither do I." The world didn't crash, but something inside me did. Quietly. Like a light going out in a house no one lives in anymore. I didn't confront him right away. I just stood up, grabbed a sweater, and walked out the door. Barefoot. No plan. The pavement was cold under my feet, grounding me in a reality I suddenly didn't recognize. I ended up outside Eric and Sadie's house. Lights off. Still. I sat on the curb. Alone. Shaking. Wondering if I'd become the woman who broke her own heart trying to save a marriage that had already ended. And then the porch light turned on. Eric stood there, hair messy, t-shirt clinging to his chest, surprise in his eyes, but not confusion. As if some part of him expected me. "I know," he said gently. "I saw her message too." I covered my face with my hands. "What are we doing, Eric?" He came down the steps, sat beside me. Not too close, just enough to share the weight. Trying to survive what we said yes to. We didn't speak after that. The silence wasn't awkward, it was intimate, raw. I felt his shoulder barely brush mine, and somehow that touch was louder than anything either of our spouses had given us in weeks. But just as I let myself lean into that stillness, a car pulled up. Al. He stepped out slowly, eyes wide as they caught the two of us on the curb. His jaw tightened. Eric stood, a reflex. I followed, heart pounding. "Is this what we're doing now?" Al asked, voice too calm to be real. "No," I whispered. "This is what you started." And in that moment, I realized this wasn't just about one night anymore. It was about everything we'd buried, every quiet resentment, every glance we pretended not to notice. The fallout wasn't coming. It was here. Al's footsteps were slow, deliberate. His eyes flicked between me and Eric, then back to me, like he was trying to decide if he should be angry or heartbroken. Maybe both. "You weren't answering," he said. "I woke up and you were just gone." I opened my mouth to respond, but my throat closed. Everything I'd rehearsed, everything I thought I'd say if this moment ever came, melted away. So instead, I just looked at him. Really looked. "I read the messages," I said quietly. His face didn't change, not really. Just a small exhale. Like he knew this was coming. Like maybe he wanted it to. Eric stepped back, hands in his pockets, eyes low. He knew this wasn't his moment. It was ours, mine and Al's. Al walked closer, stopping just a foot away from me. It wasn't supposed to happen like that. I swallowed. But it did. There was no yelling. No accusations. Just this deep, aching sadness that filled the space between us like fog. He finally said, "I didn't want to hurt you." I nodded. "But you did." "I didn't fall in love with her," he added quickly, like it mattered. It wasn't love. Just escape. That was the climax. Not the affair, not the swap, not even the betrayal. It was the admission that we both had tried to escape the version of each other we no longer recognized. "I thought saying yes would fix us," I whispered. "But maybe we weren't broken. Maybe we were just tired." Ael's eyes softened. "Then why does this still hurt so much?" I took a step forward and placed my hand on his chest, where I used to belong. And in that one touch, I felt it. The love was still there. Dimmed. Damaged. But not gone. "I don't know if we can go back," I said. "But I also don't know if I'm ready to walk away." A long beat passed. Then he whispered, "What if we don't go back? What if we go forward and try to figure out who we are now?" It wasn't a promise. It wasn't forgiveness. But it was something new. And then, out of the silence, Eric's phone buzzed. He looked down, blinked, then held it out. "Sadie, I'm pregnant." We didn't go home that night. Al and I drove for hours, saying nothing, just listening to the low hum of the road beneath us. We ended up at a lake we used to visit when we first started dating, before mortgages and missed glances and the slow decay of intimacy. The kind of place where you could still believe in second chances. The sky was just starting to warm with morning light when we got out and stood by the water. He slipped his hand into mine like he used to, hesitant, unsure, but still reaching. "I don't know what happens next," I said, my voice raw. "Neither do I," he replied. "But maybe that's the point. No more pretending we're fine. No more trying to outrun the quiet." We sat there until the sun rose, and for the first time in months, I didn't feel like I was holding my breath. Sadie's text changed everything, but not the way I expected. She didn't know who the father was. Eric was shattered, but calm. A kind of still heartbreak I could see in his shoulders more than his eyes. We talked, the four of us. Not in anger, but like people trying to clean up the wreckage of something they all had a hand in breaking. In the end, Eric chose to step away. Sadie didn't fight it. Maybe she knew that whatever she was chasing, it had already passed. Al and I started therapy. Weekly, messy, real. Not the kind where you walk away feeling better, but the kind where you finally hear each other again. I told him everything I'd buried. He listened. And slowly, we began to rebuild, not the life we had, but something new. And me? I forgave myself. For saying yes. For not knowing what I needed until I almost lost everything. I stopped blaming the woman I was in that moment. She wasn't weak, she was just searching. Now, when he touches me, it's different. Slower. More careful. Not like he's trying to reclaim what we lost, but like he's falling for me all over again. And I think, maybe I'm doing the same. Because that moment, when he whispered her name into my neck, not mine, that was the end of who we were. But not the end of us.